Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Wrestle News 365. We're back live here streaming on the official Wrestle News 365 YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about SummerSlam. We're going to talk a little bit about Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. We're going to have a lot of content coming onto the channel over the next few days. Of course, it's SummerSlam weekend. You can't not be talking about SummerSlam and talking about WWE, talking about the ThunderDome, talking about the Amway Center, talking about all of that fun stuff. So keep your eyes peeled here on the channel because we're going to be talking a lot about SummerSlam and a lot about NXT TakeOver, a lot about the ThunderDome, a lot about Vince McMahon, a lot about Raw. Everything is going to be going on over the next few days as we head into SummerSlam. I've literally just, a couple of minutes ago, registered for the ThunderDome for SummerSlam on Sunday. So I don't know if the time which you're watching this or if you're watching this live, if the registration period is still open. But if it is, you can go to www.thunderdome.com and you can register for ThunderDome Sunday at SummerSlam. I've also registered for tonight's episode of SmackDown, so I will be hopefully, fingers crossed, participating in the ThunderDome tonight on Friday Night SmackDown. So that's the aim. Fingers crossed, we'll be participating for ThunderDome tonight on SmackDown. Maybe you'll even see my ugly mug on Fox for Friday Night SmackDown tonight. But SummerSlam, let's talk about SummerSlam. Let's talk about Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. Let's talk about the WWE Championship. Let's talk about the main event because there are a lot of matches that obviously a lot of people are talking about for SummerSlam, and in fairness, the card is actually very strong. I think it's one of the stronger cards that WWE has done this year, and as it should be, right? SummerSlam is arguably second or third biggest show that WWE puts on in the year. You've got WrestleMania as the top. I would say Royal Rumble is probably the second biggest event now, and then SummerSlam is the third biggest event, but it's one of the traditional big four, right? You had Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. It's one of the traditional big four pay-per-view events, and I think the card reflects that for SummerSlam at the weekend, but specifically the main event, the WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton. Now, this has sort of been a hybrid of two matches that were scheduled to take place at SummerSlam. Now, if we hadn't had a global pandemic, which we are, let's not, kid ourselves, let's not live in an alternate reality, but indulge me for a second here. If we hadn't had a pandemic, the idea was to have Drew McIntyre defending the WWE Championship against Brock Lesnar in a WrestleMania rematch for the WWE Championship. The other match that was scheduled for SummerSlam was Randy Orton versus Edge Part 3 in an end to their trilogy, their rivalry. We're going to have the blow-off matches for both of those feuds. Obviously, the pandemic has changed some things. We haven't seen Brock Lesnar since WrestleMania. I think there are several reasons as to why that is the case. One, Brock Lesnar is very, very expensive. He is obviously contracted to a specific amount of dates per year, but it costs WWE a lot to do those dates. A time of financial uncertainty, and they've just released lots of talent back in April. I think WWE are kind of hesitant to bring Brock in, but given that we are going to be in the Amway Center inside the WWE ThunderDome, there have been rumors that we might see a couple of returns this Sunday at SummerSlam, so who knows, maybe we will get a Brock Lesnar appearance, who knows. But another factor to that as to why we haven't seen Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam is also that Brock Lesnar lives in Canada, and obviously the travel restrictions due to the quarantine and the pandemic make that it's very difficult to travel between countries, and therefore for Brock Lesnar specifically, it's quite difficult for him to get into the United States at the moment. So the Brock Lesnar-Drew McIntyre match is for another date. Of course, Randy Orton versus Edge isn't happening at SummerSlam because it's a strange one, Randy Orton versus Edge. Now, I've got to backtrack here. Basically, it was going to be Randy Orton versus Edge at WrestleMania, which they had. The last man standing match, Edge won. They originally planned for the second match to be at SummerSlam. Things changed due to the dwindling ratings and due to Vince McMahon's thought that Backlash needed some star power. So we had Randy Orton versus Edge Part 2, the greatest wrestling match ever at Backlash, which of course Randy Orton won. But unfortunately in that match, Edge tore his triceps and now is out until Royal Rumble WrestleMania time next year. So what do you do with two matches that you can't do? You merge them together and you get Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton. WWE AR Empire says hi to you too. Thanks for joining us here today. And I think this is the match that I'm probably looking forward to the most, to be honest. I'm looking forward to this match the most at SummerSlam because just think of Randy Orton's year. Think of the year that Randy Orton has had in WWE so far. And even if you go back right to the start of the year, I think back to that AJ Styles angle he had on Monday Night Raw, right? Do you remember this? When back before the world went mad, they had an angle at a live event where it looked like Randy Orton had gone down with a knee injury. This was around January time. It looked like Randy Orton had gone down with a knee injury. Is he going to make WrestleMania or not? And everyone bit on it. Everyone reported it. The following night on Raw, he comes out with a crutch, with a knee brace, says, yeah, I did get an injury. My aim is to be back at WrestleMania time. Am I going to be back? I don't know, but I'll do my very best. He was feuding with AJ Styles at the time. And then AJ Styles mocks him. Randy Orton says he was just faking. RKO, bang. Great segment. It would be chalk and cheese and compared to nothing to what his segments he would do later on this year, but it was a great segment nevertheless. And then he just went from strength to strength as the year's gone on, right? Edge returns at the Royal Rumble. Then the following night on Raw, we have now, in my opinion, one of the most, in terms of recent Raw history, one of the more iconic angles, which was Edge returning from that career-ending injury, and then you have Randy Orton turn on him, RKO him, hit him with a steel chair, hit him with a concerto. Unbelievable segment, just incredible segment. Then, whilst Edge is on the shelf, due to that attack from Randy Orton, you then have his interactions with Matt Hardy, right? It feels like a lifetime ago, considering that Matt Hardy is now in AEW. But Matt Hardy, he had the interactions with him, hits him with the concerto the following week on Raw, hits him with a concerto using the steel steps. That's Matt Hardy's last appearance on WWE television. That was brilliant. Then you had the segment with Beth Phoenix, Edge's wife, where she confronts him. Randy Orton then blames Beth Phoenix for all of that's happened to Edge, and then he RKO's Beth Phoenix. Brilliant segment. Then he had the match at WrestleMania, which it was a last man standing match with Edge. Did it go too long? Absolutely. It did go way too long. I don't think that's... I'm not going to blame Edge and Randy Orton for that. I think the fact that... I think it was like a 40-minute match or something like that. Should it have been about 30? Yes, absolutely. Although I will say that if they did have a crowd there, it would have felt significantly shorter because those transition spots would have had the crowd reaction that they could build the story there. So I do sympathise with them for that. I didn't hate the match as much as some people did. Some people really hated it, and I thought that was very, very harsh. So I thought the match was fine. Then the match at Backlash, the greatest wrestling match ever. Again, sympathised for both of Edge and Randy Orton in that match because... when was it ever going to meet the standards of the greatest wrestling match ever? It never was. Was it the greatest wrestling match ever? No, because no match is the greatest wrestling match ever, because that's a subjective term and no one will ever be able to agree on that. Was it a damn good match and one of the best matches on WWE television this year? Absolutely. Really enjoyed the match. Thought it was a great match. It was great to see Edge working a match again. Like, obviously, I know you can say about WrestleMania, the Last Man Standing match, that was a gimmick match. This one wasn't. It was a straight up wrestling match, and I thought it was brilliant, and I really enjoyed that. So I think they lived up to the standards as much as they could, considering the build to that one. He punts Edge in the head at Backlash. Of course, Edge does get injured at Backlash legitimately, not from the punt kick, but he tears his triceps. During a pickup spot for an RKO, which was frustrating, but I guess these things happen. So he's got the momentum of writing Edge off television for the second time in the year. That's big momentum. Then the following night on Raw, we have Christian come back for one more match, even though it wasn't a match. Unsanctioned match. That episode of Raw was actually really, really good. It was the first post-Paul Heyman edition of Monday Night Raw, and it was actually incredible. It was a great episode of Raw. I really enjoyed that. They told a narrative story throughout the show. Just really enjoyed it. The final segment had Ric Flair once again align himself with Randy Orton, low blows Christian. Orton punts Christian in the head. This is a guy that's had concussion issues and had to retire due to concussion issues. Great segment, love that. So he's already got momentum there, and he starts referring himself to the Legend Killer again, and he's got Ric Flair by his side again. He's cutting unbelievable promos. He then has a feud with Big Show because Big Show wants to get some form of redemption for Edge and Christian, his friends Edge and Christian. This leads to an unsanctioned match, and once again, Big Show gets a punt in the head by Randy Orton, and at this point, Randy Orton, in the space of a year, has put out the likes of Matt Hardy, Edge, Christian, and the Big Show, referring to himself as the Legend Killer again. Who's hotter than Randy Orton right now? Nobody. He's got Ric Flair as his mentor. what does he do? Is the ultimate heel move. He punts Ric Flair in the head. And that segment, when he punted Ric Flair in the head, everyone knew it was coming. Everyone knew it was coming. I saw Dave Meltzer say, "Oh, they did a really predictable thing at the TV tapings." Well, it doesn't matter if it's about how predictable it is, if it's good. And it was really good. You didn't hear anyone the following week or when that segment happened go, "Yeah, predictable, rubbish." They went, "Oh, yeah, I knew it was going to happen, but it was good. I enjoyed it. The promo by Orton was great. The promo by Flair was great. And I'm glad Ric Flair isn't on WWE television. He's 71, 72 years old. He doesn't need to be on television in 2020 during a worldwide pandemic. I love Ric Flair. I wish Ric Flair, if this was a normal time, hell yeah, have Ric Flair on television. But this isn't a normal time, unfortunately. It's a time which you need to stay safe and you need to social distance and you need to... if you're vulnerable, you need to stay away and you need to quarantine and you need to self-isolate. It's unfortunate. It's a horrible time. But I'm glad that Ric Flair is now at home and not on television. And I know they're no longer in the Performance Center, but at the time he was in that Performance Center, which was just an absolute pit of COVID spreading mess. 40 plus people testing positive. They didn't They didn't do tests for 4 months. They didn't wear masks for the longest time. It was just an absolute farce. But going back to the segment, loved the Ric Flair Randy Orton segment. That was brilliant too. So then what do we get to? We get to the Shawn Michaels segment this past week on Raw. Ugh. The Shawn Michaels segment this past week on Raw. Yeah, didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. Basically, it was just... I didn't mind the promo. The promo was fine. It felt... backwards. I didn't really see the need for Shawn Michaels to be on Raw, otherwise just to pop a rating, and it didn't work because the third hour absolutely died as per usual. But he's talking about how dare Randy Orton turn his back on Ric Flair, blah blah blah, and says he's gonna give Orton sweet chin music or a Claymore at SummerSlam. Essentially, the Randy Orton sneaks up behind him, RKO's him, and punts him in the head, and Shawn Michaels just doesn't sell it. Just didn't sell it at all. He just decided, you had the likes of Edge get kicked in the head and his eyes are wide and he's on the floor, he's unconscious. Same happened to Christian, unconscious, stretcher job. Same happens to the Big Show, unconscious. Ric Flair, he's 71 years old, so if he gets kicked in the head, if he doesn't die, he's certainly unconscious. But Shawn Michaels, a 55-year-old Shawn Michaels punted in the head, just goes in the corner, just looks a bit confused. Oh, I don't know where I am. It's the Performance Center. Oh, God, I'm in the Performance Center. Put on my mask. I mean, it was just bizarre. And rightfully so, Shawn Michaels got called out about it. And I saw some people say, is this retribution for Randy Orton's comments about NXT? No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what. I don't know why Shawn Michaels didn't sell it. It was just very bizarre. And... obviously, Shawn Michaels has got a lot of respect, and I don't know if anyone would have had a word with him, but if I was Randy Orton, I'd be like, dude, the angle is the punt kick. The whole point is the punt kick. Why aren't you selling the punt kick? Very, very strange. Very, very strange. But Drew McIntyre as WWE Champion. Let's talk about Drew McIntyre as WWE Champion. He has been very, very unfortunate, I think. Obviously, he won the WWE Championship in front of 0 fans for the majority of his run. Well, for the entirety of his run, he's not been performing in front of paying fans. He's been either performing in front of no fans or performing in front of WWE Performance Center recruits at the Performance Center. Given all of that, even if there were fans here at the time, I think he'd have done a great job anyway. But considering the circumstances, Drew McIntyre has done a great job. He's never been the WWE champion in front of a paying crowd. No WWE champion, apart from Braun Strowman, because he did it at the same time, has had to deal with these kind of circumstances. But in opposition to Braun Strowman, I think Drew McIntyre has done a fantastic job, because if you look on social media and you look at the comments about Drew McIntyre on social media, the fans are still on his side. How often have we been able to say that about guys that they've tried to crown as the WWE champion? Seth Rollins last year, Universal Champion. The fans turned very quickly. It's not Seth Rollins' fault. Maybe actually, well, I retract that. Partially Seth Rollins' fault because some of his comments that he was making on Twitter at the time, but also the booking of him was terrible too. And that was the problem. That was the problem there. So I think that might have been a problem there. But you look at Drew McIntyre. The fans are on his side. The fans still believe in Drew McIntyre. The fans think he's doing a good job, and the fans still think that he is a credible WWE champion. And you have to give him credit for that. You have to give him credit for that, because It's not been easy. It's really not been easy. But he's done a great job, I think, and I think that he needs to be credited for that. He absolutely needs to be credited for that. His promos are great. His matches are great. He's doing great. And look at the challenges that he's faced and defeated during this period of time. He's defeated Seth Rollins at Money in the Bank. He defeated Bobby Lashley at Backlash, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was a great match. Had that feud with Dolph Ziggler that I don't think anyone cared about, because Dolph Ziggler he was never a threat, was he? Ever a threat, and that whole thing just felt like such filler. I think his best feud, like I mentioned, was against Bobby Lashley at Backlash. I thought that was really, really good stuff from MVP. I thought MVP did a great job carrying the mic work in that feud for Bobby Lashley anyway, and I thought the match at Backlash was very, very good. But the feud with Orton, it feels a bit strange, doesn't it? Because the promos have been good and their interactions have been fine. They've had a couple of good segments where they've sort of battled each other on the mic. But to me, Drew McIntyre almost feels a bit like an afterthought in this for me. This whole angle, in my opinion, has been about Randy Orton. This whole angle has been about Randy Orton being the legend killer, punting the likes of Edge, Christian, Big Show, Ric Flair, and now Shawn Michaels in the head. It's just all been about Randy Orton. And usually I would say, well, that's not good enough. You need to feature the WWE Champion, the up-and-coming WWE Champion. But this is a different circumstance, and the reason that is because nobody at all can touch Randy Orton in 2020. He is the true MVP of World Wrestling Entertainment in 2020. Obviously, we've had people step up this year, especially during the COVID era, the likes of Asuka, Bayley, Sasha Banks. They've all done absolutely tremendous. Even Drew McIntyre to an extent, done very, very well. But during that period of time, nobody has been able to touch Randy Orton. He is the best heel in WWE right now. He is the best heel in professional wrestling right now. His promos are just excellent, superb. The great thing about the Edge-Randy Orton feud, in my opinion, obviously the match at Backlash was great, but I thought every single segment in terms of promos that they did, they just knocked it out of the park, because they're so great at what they do when they're on the mic. And that's what it's been with Randy Orton right now. He's the best heel. He is the best heel in professional wrestling. His promos are great. His character's great. And you look at the career that he's had in WWE. 18 years after Randy Orton made his WWE debut, Randy Orton is still at the top of his game and arguably doing some of the best work of his career. And it's just a fact. And he's always done great work as a heel. Randy Orton has always done fantastic work as a heel. He's better as a heel. He's always better as a heel. You look back on his work in 2007, 2008, 2009, that was peak psycho, bold-headed Randy Orton, and that was phenomenal. That was great work. The issue was, during that period of time, is like any great heel, he got too popular and he was too good of a heel. And once you become too good of a heel and you get too popular, they turn you babyface, because ultimately this is a business and WWE wants to make money. And that was the problem with Randy Orton. He'd been around for so long that the fans admired him, respected him. Everyone knew who Randy Orton was. He was a draw. So whenever he came out, fans always cheered for him. So they couldn't not have him as a babyface, because he drove merchandise. He always got a good pop, and fans liked him. And that kind of led Randy Orton, who always wanted to be a heel. He was very vocal over the last few years, saying that that's what he wanted. He wanted to be a heel. But I think that led this babyface run that Randy Orton instead came into, especially after the brand split. Obviously, he was WWE Champion for a brief moment on SmackDown, but after that, I think maybe he will admit this himself, but he's certainly been accused of in the last few years, especially when he was a babyface, of going through the motions, right? He was just being there. He was on a reduced schedule. He was a big name. He got a pop. He was the guy you could put in the main event whenever you wanted, or he could work with the younger guys. He was just, I don't want to say he's a mid-card guy, but he kind of transitioned into being a mid-card guy, right? On SmackDown, he was the US champion for a while, and at WrestleMania that year in 2018, he was part of a US Championship Fatal 4-Way match, and it's sort of like, this is Randy Orton. This is the guy. This is a guy who's like a 13-time, 14-time world champion or whatever. But because he was on a reduced schedule, and because he was a babyface and he was kind of going through the motions, it just felt like he was just another body there at the time. But ever since the start of the year, and ever since we had this heel turn on Edge, this is the Randy Orton. This is the best Randy Orton. This is the peak Randy Orton. This is the Randy Orton that is at his peak, and nobody has had a better year or done better work in WWE in 2020 than Randy Orton. Nobody's able to touch him. And I've been a big proponent of Drew McIntyre. I think he's done a great job as WWE Champion. I'm sure he'll have more and more WWE Championship reigns in the future. And if you go back and watch a few videos on this channel, I've been very vocal in saying that, you've got to have the belt on McIntyre for like a year, and the way to build guys up, you've got to do it the same way that you built up guys like John Cena up, in that they win. Every big match they have, they win, because that's ultimately how you get fans to buy into you win big matches. But, and I'm almost going to break my own rule here, I just don't think you can look past Randy Orton in this match. I don't think you can. I think he'll leave the Amway Center. He'll leave the ThunderDome at SummerSlam. I think we'll look at a new WWE champion. That'll be Randy Orton. And the reason why, I just think he's the best thing right now on Monday Night Raw. And I would probably have him as WWE champion. Now, there have been rumors that Randy Orton could win the WWE Championship at SummerSlam, hold it until Royal Rumble or WrestleMania time when Edge returns, and then you can have Edge versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. Do I think that match needs the WWE Championship? No. But, Edge becoming WWE Champion, what would that look like again? It's an interesting prospect, I suppose, but you have to wonder then what happens to Drew McIntyre. Does he get lost in the shuffle? I hope not. Again, because I think he's done a very, very good job. The way I would do it is have Randy Orton win at SummerSlam. Then you can have him and Drew McIntyre feud over the championship. Maybe have the rematch at the Royal Rumble next year. Who knows what the situation is going to be for fans at that point? I don't know. Even the way the world's going at the moment, I don't even know if we'll have fans, full capacity fans back in the arena then at that point. If we do, I would have Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre at the Royal Rumble. Then you can have McIntyre win the title back again, and he can have that big moment in front of a live crowd where he's fully crowned as not only the WWE Champion, but the guy. That's what I would like to see. And then maybe he wins it back, he being Drew McIntyre, because of Edge's return, and then Edge faces Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and Edge can pick up his feud with Randy Orton. But as I mentioned, there are suggestions that potentially the match between Randy Orton versus Edge at WrestleMania next year could be for the WWE Championship. Now, there were also reports that potentially not only was it going to be for the WWE Championship, but potentially we could have Edge versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania in an I Quit match too. Again, I don't have a problem with it, because I actually really enjoyed their match at Backlash. I thought it was really, really good. I think they did a great job. I don't think the feud between Edge and Randy Orton needs the WWE Championship. I think they're two iconic names. Edge is a Hall of Famer. Randy Orton is a first ballot Hall of Famer too. I don't think it needs the WWE Championship, but by all accounts, that's what WWE is potentially looking at. So we'll have to wait and see if WWE wants to have Edge versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble next year. Plans change. Do you really think that this is the SummerSlam card that they had envisioned at the start of the year, or even prior to the pandemic? Absolutely not. So we'll have to wait and see for that one. But in my opinion, I think Randy Orton is going to leave SummerSlam as the WWE Champion, although I don't think this will be the first and the last match that Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton have for the WWE Championship. You've got to remember as well, Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton did actually have quite a few interactions around January time of this year when they were both... Randy Orton was a babyface at the time, and Drew McIntyre was sort of transitioning into a babyface. And they had a lot of interactions, and they actually had some fun matches on Monday Night Raw. I remember a few spots where Drew McIntyre would just chop the living hell out of Randy Orton. You can go and find those videos, and look, they had great chemistry. And I'm sure they'll have great chemistry in this match. Randy Orton has actually been on a media call during probably this stream, but even before I got on the stream, I knew that he was on a media call, and he's spoken about that. He thinks he's going to get sort of 35, 40 minutes to do his WWE Championship masterpiece on Sunday at SummerSlam. And as I mentioned, I'm really looking forward to it. This is the best version of Randy Orton. This is peak Randy Orton, and I do think he's going to leave SummerSlam as the WWE Champion. Anthony says, what are your predictions for big swerves at SummerSlam? My big swerve is a reveal that Roman Reigns is the leader of Retribution on Sunday. Now, WrestleVotes, I did mention this earlier in the stream, but I can talk about it again here. WrestleVotes, who are a very, very, very credible source online, they're very much in the know for insider WWE information and spoilers. They were one of pretty much the first people to actually break the news that the Amway Center was going to be used for SummerSlam and for the events going forward. So they've actually did a little bit of a report earlier saying that they were about SummerSlam. It said, quote, heard throughout the weekend, WWE has things planned that are, quote, different but pretty cool, end quote. They are treating this ThunderDome as a restart of sorts. Expect a return or two, along with some new storylines, ideas. So, Roman Reigns, he could come back. I still don't think that he will. But again, plans could change. If Roman Reigns ultimately feels safe, then he'll come back. That's what he's always said. He said it's not about not trusting the WWE, because he does trust the WWE. He said that his issues were that he wanted all of his colleagues to be ensured that they were doing the right thing and they were safe. And he just said that ultimately he can't trust going into an airport and all of that sort of stuff. So if Roman Reigns feels safe, then maybe he will come back. If there's any time to do it, right, it would be SummerSlam. And let's be honest, WWE could seriously do with Roman Reigns right now on WWE television. They're lacking stars. They need big names. They've got big names out, especially in the women's division, right, when you've got Becky Lynch and Charlotte and Ronda Rousey away. But, Roman Reigns, he could come back. I don't think he's going to be the leader of Retribution or anything like that. I think those guys are most likely going to be NXT guys. Potentially, I've seen some people speculating about Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa could certainly be a leader of Retribution, so we'll have to wait and see for that. I do think Retribution will be involved, though. I think you're right. At SummerSlam on Sunday. They're most likely going to get involved tonight on SmackDown. We know that Vince McMahon is actually opening SmackDown tonight. So maybe, who knows, Retribution could maybe attack the chairman. That would be a step up, wouldn't it, right? You're going to have them doing stupid vandalism stuff at the Performance Center, which just doesn't feel like chaotic or cool at all. It just feels like we're just petulant children. But if they attack the chairman tonight on ThunderDome, and like WrestleVotes just said there, they're treating the ThunderDome like a restart of sorts, and what better way to get people's attention, because people will be watching tonight, because people are interested in seeing what WWE is going to pull off with this ThunderDome. So what better way than to make a statement by attacking Vince McMahon to open SmackDown tonight? That's what I would do if I was in charge of the creative. So we'll have to wait and see for that one. But I do agree with you. I do think we're going to see a couple of swerves Sunday at SummerSlam. The tagline is "You'll never see it coming." So they've obviously got some big things planned, so we'll have to wait and see. One of the things I think is planned is that Randy Orton will leave SummerSlam as the WWE Champion. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton at SummerSlam? And let me know your thoughts in the live chat or in the comment section below if you're watching this after we've gone off the air. If you have enjoyed this video, this stream, be sure to smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out on YouTube, get up the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds here on YouTube. So if you haven't already, please do give us a like. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now after the video has uploaded. Also, we'll put a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you guys to watch. Be sure to subscribe to WrestleNews 365 because, as I mentioned at the top of the stream, we're going to be doing a lot of videos and a lot of content over this weekend. Obviously, we've got the ThunderDome shows for SmackDown, SummerSlam, and Raw, and just in general going forward. We've got SummerSlam this Sunday, so we'll be doing a lot of SummerSlam videos, predictions, etc. and previews. We're going to be doing a lot of previews. We've got NXT TakeOver on Saturday. We did a predictions video, but we'll be doing reactions to that too. So if you've subscribed and you've got the notifications on, you won't miss a time that we go live here on the channel or we upload any video. Always a ton of news at this time of year, so make sure that you subscribed. We're on the road to 700 subscribers here on YouTube, on that long road to 1,000. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you have subscribed, just know that I really do appreciate it. Schlock says, yes, I subscribed. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. You can also follow us on our social media platforms too. The handles are on the screen right now. The links are in the description box below. It's at 365Wrestle on Twitter and at WrestleNews365 on Facebook and Instagram. So be sure to give us a follow or a like there if you haven't already. We'll be doing live tweets and live posts about SmackDown, SummerSlam and TakeOver and AEW this weekend. So much going on. So be sure to like and subscribe and you won't miss a single thing. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming.